The Dominican Republic is a beautiful Caribbean nation, known for its pristine beaches, rich cultural heritage, and warm hospitality. However, the country's history is also intertwined with that of the United States, particularly during the early 20th century when the U.S. attempted to establish a Caribbean empire. In this article, we will explore how one vote in the U.S. Senate stopped the U.S. from achieving this goal. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States was undergoing a period of expansionism, fueled by a desire to become a world power. One aspect of this expansionism was the acquisition of territories outside of the U.S. mainland. In 1898, the U.S. defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War and acquired the territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. These acquisitions were controversial, with some arguing that they violated American principles of democracy and self-determination. Despite these concerns, the U.S. continued to pursue territorial expansion, particularly in the Caribbean. In 1904, the U.S. government established the Roosevelt Corollary, which asserted the U.S.'s right to intervene in the affairs of Latin American nations to protect American interests. This policy led to U.S. intervention in several countries in the region, including the Dominican Republic. In 1916, the U.S. government sent troops to the Dominican Republic to restore order following a period of political instability. The U.S. established a military government in the country and began implementing reforms aimed at modernizing the economy and government. While some Dominicans welcomed these changes, others resented the U.S. presence and saw it as an infringement on their sovereignty. In 1922, the U.S. government negotiated a treaty with the Dominican Republic that would make the country a U.S. protectorate. The treaty would give the U.S. control over the country's finances, foreign relations, and military. It would also grant U.S. companies the right to exploit the country's natural resources. However, the treaty faced opposition in the U.S. Senate, particularly from Senator William Borah of Idaho. Borah was a staunch opponent of U.S. imperialism and argued that the treaty violated American principles of democracy and self-determination. He also criticized the treaty for its lack of provisions protecting Dominican workers and for giving U.S. companies unfettered access to the country's resources. Despite pressure from the U.S. government and business interests, Borah held firm in his opposition to the treaty. In January 1922, the Senate voted on the treaty, and it failed to receive the necessary two-thirds majority for approval. The vote effectively stopped the U.S. from establishing a protectorate over the Dominican Republic and prevented the country from becoming part of a larger U.S. Caribbean empire. The failure of the treaty was a significant moment in U.S. history, representing a shift away from the country's imperial ambitions. It also demonstrated the power of the U.S. Senate to check the power of the executive branch and to uphold American principles of democracy and self-determination. In conclusion, the Dominican Republic's history is closely intertwined with that of the United States, particularly during the early 20th century when the U.S. attempted to establish a Caribbean empire. However, one vote in the U.S. Senate stopped this ambition, and the failure of the treaty represented a significant moment in U.S. history. Today, the Dominican Republic is an independent nation, and the country's rich culture and history continue to be celebrated and cherished by its people and visitors alike.